G'day guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. Tonight I'm going to be doing a review of a low-budget American independent horror film, a very creative film, released in the year 2007. Now this movie has been split up into three segments. Each segment is directed by a different person, so we've got three directors for this one. David Bruckner, Dan Bush and Jacob Gentry, and this is the film called The Signal. And the story to The Signal is as follows. It started one night. It was New Year's Eve. All forms of communication, including TV and radio, became jammed by a mysterious transmission. The signal preyed on your fear and your desires, driving everyone in the city to murder and madness. People used to be normal, but now everyone is a psychopathic killer. Must get out of the city. Once the signal came, a city once defined by conformity has now turned into screaming chaos. Fortunately, one man has managed to survive the effects of the signal and is now determined to make his way through the bedlam that sweeps the streets and rescue the woman he loves. In a city where everyone seems to have lost their mind, the only way Ben will be able to determine who he can trust and who has given in to their bloodlust is to find out the true origins of this ominous broadcast. So basically, you're following the standard rules of the zombie apocalypse, except here we're dealing with psychopaths who have been watching the TV and radio. One morning, the TVs and radios have given off a signal that causes people to go insane. So the whole city has been besieged by this insanity, and they're starting to kill each other. So it's really the end of the world sort of feel. Now, one guy has resisted the effects of the signal, and he is determined to find out the true origins behind this mayhem, and at the same time try and rescue the love of his life. So whether or not he succeeds in doing so, that's something you're going to have to find out, because that's as far as I'm going with the synopsis. So if you want to know how it finishes, please go out there and see this movie for yourself. Now, my thoughts on the film. A very creative film, which is a pleasant surprise coming from a very tired subgenre. Unfortunately, the film's positive is also its negative. I thought the film was way too ambitious, and the directors tried to do something that they weren't able to pull off. But I could appreciate the fact that they took a risk. Now, I'll go through the positives. Now, the biggest positive of the film is that it's a low-budget movie, and once again, the directors are full aware of what they can and cannot do. They don't try and win the audience over with some dodgy CGI. It's all very practical effects, and most of the film is done by psychology. It's not so much what you see, it's what is left up to the viewer's mind. So for that, I thought the directors paid a lot of respect for the viewers, and it doesn't happen very often. Usually, a lot of the time, the low-budget stuff will try and win you over with some cheap tricks, whereas this film I actually thought was very well made. A lot of attention to detail. The acting was very good. The characters were larger than life. They were a little bit exaggerated, but yeah, although you don't get too much sympathy for them, fortunately the film doesn't run on character development. The segments are both good and bad. I'll go through the segments a little bit later, but first, the soundtrack was very good. I thought, that was a genuine sort of horror soundtrack. It wasn't too much to talk about, but it wasn't bad either. And then you've got the violence. A lot of it was off screen. I know that's going to put a lot of people off, but for me, I actually thought it left a lot to the imagination. So once again, the directors weren't trying to put a lot of CGI gore and blood in. It was all very practical, and I don't know whether or not they weren't game to show the violence or they didn't have enough money to show the gore. If that was the case, then once again, that is another tick in the box of the respect for the directors. Now, unfortunately, where the film comes undone is the three segments. Now, the first segment, we get a very genuine horror feel. You get the end of the world sort of feeling in that the signal is starting to take effect, and there are some genuinely bone-chilling moments in the film, and it's all down to psychology. And I actually thought, I was in for something very, very good. Then the second segment comes along. Now, the second segment is by far my favourite, but the problem with it is that it's a straight-out dark comedy, and it goes against everything that was built up in the first segment. So, therefore, the first, second, and third segment, well, the third segment is much the same as the first, but the second segment just felt so out of place that it took all continuity out of the film, and when I come to the third segment, I just didn't have any interest because I was still trying to get over how good the second segment was. So for that, I actually thought it would have been much better off if it was just a straightforward horror film throughout each segment, or if it was a straight-out dark comedy. I thought that they tried to blend in a lot of different genres. There was horror, comedy, and the last genre was kind of a science fiction horror, and I could appreciate the horror elements, but the the dark comedy just felt so out of place that it was more 3 short films rather than 3 segments in an overall film. So yeah, the second segment has some of the best dark humor I've seen in a very long time, and it was genuinely laugh out loud stuff. But then the third segment goes back to serious, and I just didn't have any interest in how it ended because, as I said, I was still trying to get over how good the second segment was. So it just felt so out of place. I felt that the directors, they bit off a lot more than they could chew. They had a risk, and I can applaud the risk they took. Unfortunately for me, that risk really did take a lot out of the film, and as a result, it prevented it from being a great movie. I'm only going to give this a 2.5 out of 5. I do feel that it is certainly worth picking up. I know a lot of people out there may enjoy this movie a lot more than I did, but for me, just the completely different sort of feel that each segment had, just, it really took me out of it, and as a result of that, I just couldn't help but feel very disappointed by the end result. But I will say that the second segment is, genuinely brilliant stuff. It's very well written, and there are some very disturbing, funny elements that are actually in it. But for me, as I said, I felt that the second segment, although it was brilliant, completely ruined the film because it was completely against everything that the first segment and the third segment was all about. So yeah, as a result, 2.5 out of 5. It's certainly not the worst film going around, but after hearing so many good things about it, I couldn't help but feel that this was a genuine missed opportunity. So that's my review for The Signal. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.